this is Chetan and welcome to my channel. In this video, we're gonna make a 12-column mobile first responsive grid using just a few lines from the CSS Grid property. So let's get to it. So here I have some starter HTML with some basic styling, and what we need is to add the grid. So I'll add a class of grid to my wrapper which has the columns, and then I'll define some CSS for that grid. The first one is obviously display grid, which powers this entire thing, and then we define the columns inside the grid. So we say grid template columns repeat 12 times 1 fr, which stands for fraction. So since we want a 12 column grid, we have entering repeat 12. If you want a 9 or a 16, you can do that as well. So even without anything else, just these two lines, you can already see the columns taking shape. So how do you define each column? So let's go ahead and do that. So let's say I want this column to be 4, 5 and 3. So let me use the CSS classes accordingly. Grid call 4 for this one, grid call 5 for the second one, grid call 3 for the last one. Okay, so this grid underscore underscore call 3 is what I'm using the BEM methodology as naming convention for the classes. We'll explain the BEM concept in some other video. So now having this, we can now start defining our columns. As simple as that. Even the property names make sense here. So grid column should span 3 places, grid column here should span 4 places, grid column should span 5 places. We have 4, 5 and 3, which adds up to 12. And even if you have defined the parent, and if you want to add more columns inside of it, and the 12 columns is already filled up, the next column would automatically go to the next row. So let's try to do that. Let's have us call 6 div, the class of calls, grid call 6, and this is column 6. Okay, so it's obviously not spanning across the 6 columns because we've not defined it. So if you define it over here, there you go, it works. Just to add some breathing space, you can also add grid gap 10, and if it has a grid gap 10, this class, again the property naming makes sense. We'll have a gap of 10 pixels between each column. Okay, cool. So that's it. This is all you need to define your column. So over here we've just defined a couple of columns. Let's just define all the 12 columns. So that's it. We've defined all the 12 columns here. Now if we try to create another couple of columns, call 2 and call 4 again. Okay, we don't need that extra 2, can remove it. So as you can see, this works properly. And if it has less space, and if you've assigned a word break to this columns, it would break that column into smaller pieces to make sure it remains in the width assigned to it. 6, 2 and 4, here you can see. Okay, so now what if you want to define breakpoints and make it more powerful? It's as simple as that. You just add a media query. Let's say we're only defining one breakpoint, minimum width of a tablet, so 768 pixels. Okay, and inside of that, what we want is probably we'll take call 6 as an example here, and just add SM as an identifier for small screens. So by default what we wrote here is mobile first, so this will apply to all, especially mobile first, and then from there heading on to the bigger screens, the first breakpoint is the 768. So we add special classes for it and define different column sets for it. The other breakpoints can be 992, 1240, and even 1440. That would be extra large. So in this example, I'm just going to use 768, and you will get the point on how to expand on it. Okay, so I'll add call 8 as well. Okay, and now what I want is I'll add 3 columns here. Okay, and I'll call it 4, 4, 4 on mobile, or actually 12, 12, 12 on mobile, but on bigger screens I want it to be 6, 3 and 3. So let me just add 3. Okay, so now I just need to add grid call SM 6. So now we've defined multiple classes inside of this, and each class reflects or corresponds to a rule in the CSS. So if the minimum width is above 768, then the column should be 6, 3 and 3. Added a typo in CSS. Okay, so to recap, we've added 3 columns here, and we've defined different classes to correspond to different properties in the breakpoints that we've added. So if the screen is above 768 pixels, these 3 should be 6 columns, 3 columns and 3 columns. So you have 6 columns, 3 columns and 3 columns fitting one next to the other. And if it is below the 768 breakpoint, then it should all span 12 columns and stack one below the other. So let's try to see if it works in mobile. Yeah, so here you see the width, as the code pen is indicating the width. If it goes below 768, then it becomes call 12, call 12, call 12, spanning 12 columns. If it goes above, it becomes 6, 3 and 3. As simple as that. So there you have it. Now if you repeat the entire thing for 1 to 12, then you've already created a responsive 12 column grid based layout for 2 breakpoints, the mobile first and above 768. You can do the same for other breakpoints as well. So it's pretty simple. We added all the breakpoints for all the columns for the breakpoint of 768, and then we did the same originally for as the mobile first default column properties. Okay, so this was pretty simple. So with just display grid and grid template columns, with just these two properties, you can have a fully functional 12 column grid layout that you can use in your projects and not rely on something like Bootstrap, Foundation, Bulma, or any other frameworks for your layout needs. It's pretty powerful, and with subgrids this is going to get more powerful, so watch out for that. And I hope this video will help you in your projects. If you like the video, please hit the like button and share with your friends and other colleagues. Thank you.